screaming in pain, with the mother being completely like, what are we gonna do? Then he was living up in this cold environment up in close to Hamburg or wherever he lived, right? With the constant warfare, with Prussia, growing up in a Prussian society, having Russia right around the corner. Yeah. That's how he grew up. He was a small guy. He was always sick. He had migraine headaches because that was coming from his father's side. He took on the disease from the father. So his way out was he couldn't fight because he was too sick. He was very intelligent. So what did he come up with? Well, I'm gonna have will to power. I'm just gonna use my will. And he wrote, his whole philosophy was written on that. He came out of his own trauma. He created a whole philosophy that then was picked up by all these other young people in the world, right? And especially in Europe. The will to power, not the will to being, not the will to becoming, but the will to power. He came out of his own trauma. He wrote a whole philosophy. And why is he so popular? Well, because of that. Because there's a lot of people that have the same biopsychology in them, and they read this stuff and they're like, wow, this is great. I'm going to become Nietzsche. I'm going to go with Nietzsche. And I read Nietzsche and I'm like, it has very important, very good things to say, but I have to put the books down. They just make me feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And now I know why, because it goes against, you can't go with will to power. You have to work on the becoming, the being. That's where you're at. You have to work with his physiology. And how did he end up? He ended up becoming insane. They say, well, it was maybe syphilis, but it wasn't. He basically started having real problems around the same time his father died, the same age. Mm-hmm. Right? And then he became a baby again.
54, right? 54 years old.
He was 5 when his father died, but his father was in his, I don't know, 40s or whatever.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And Nietzsche started having problems around that same age when his father died. So when Nietzsche was in his 40s around, that's when this whole stuff started coming up in him. But you look at his childhood history, the time frame of his father dying, the father's age, right? Then he was dominated by women, sister, aunt, grandmother, mother. So he learned to go through life as a woman. And he said, no, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to will to power. And he wrote a whole philosophy on it.
Yeah, Alice Miller goes into that a lot. I don't know if you've ever read Alice Miller. She goes into like the backgrounds of a lot of these people and just shows how disturbing their childhoods are.
Yeah. The same with Spengler, Of course, the Austrian painter, Ceausescu, in Romania.
Ceausescu, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's his name.
Stalin, Lenin, all of them. All of them, every single one. You don't become just this megalomaniac, this messianic psychopath out of nowhere. This stuff is coming from somewhere, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ingalls, he complained about having to show up to work in London by 10 o'clock. Yet they're sending people to the gulags and all this other stuff. And it's wild, man. Right? He was complaining about showing up at 10 o'clock's too early. That's how, like, where he's at, and then to see where those philosophies go to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The slave labor camps and
yeah, right.
It's
communism becoming the biggest slave driving, ideology of all of them.
Yeah,
it's like the gulags were filled with the conditions these people were in. Read Solzhenitsyn. I said, any leftists running around there with the hammer and sickle. Have you read Solzhenitsyn?
Yeah, they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, just a couple of pages. I wanted to read all 3 books of the archipelago. I just was able to do one. I was like, I can't. I just can't.
Wow.
His speeches around America were good, though. A warning to the
Yeah.
West when he
Wow.
did speeches around America. It's amazing. And he calls out a lot of the people like Herbert Marcuse and Angela Davis.
Yeah.
You know, he calls out a lot of those people that were, you know, talking about the proletariat and the struggles and this and that. Yet she went to Russia, to the gulags, and said, you know, you deserve to be in here because you went against the state. Yet she's in her own country supposedly fighting against the state and the oppression of the you know, and yet he was like, yeah, she came to the gulags and said, you deserve to be here. You know, yet and they're political prisoners asking to get out, just like the stuff that she was fighting for in America. She was a biggest fucking hypocrite.
Exactly. And they all are. Every single one of them. You know, every single one of them.
You know, I read that stuff too when I was younger. You know, the Black Panther stuff, Angela Davis, all this. But I'm able to read other things and change my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't just stay there, you know. So
when you don't have an individuated barometer, then utopia is your destination.
Yeah.
And utopia is a socialist wet dream.
Yeah.
Because the other is to go it alone.
Yeah.
And if you know, that's why religion is social. It's a social get together where people pray once a week in public together, because in a lot of ways, the thought of praying alone or worshiping alone is too much.
Mm-hmm.
So it fits for that utopic vision that heaven is far away, it's on its way. You know, God will return on a white horse.
You need the savior.
Right.
You can't do it yourself.
Yep.
Right.
And this is what has held humanity back for thousands of years, and why it's not the solution to go back to a socialist structure as a saving grace, when individuation is in reality the best path forward. Because individuation is the opposite of utopia.
Yeah.
It's not dystopia, it's what's the word that it's holtopia. In other words, you neither need the you or the dis. It's the basic ability to operate as a whole human being in a very divided world.
An inner harmony, right?
But it's in your biology. It's already it's in you. It's wired in you.
Right. Well, hold your 2 hands together.
Yeah.
And you look at that mirror image.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more divine than the human body that tells us it's absolutely divided, but it's one in itself.
Yeah.
To be realized as such. Well, let's jump to another slide here. Luke, you want to go for
In
this?
working with trauma for over 3 decades, I have come to the conclusion that human beings are born with an innate capacity to triumph over trauma. I believe not only that trauma is curable, but that the healing process can be a catalyst for profound awakening, a portal opening to emotional and genuine spiritual transformation. I have little doubt that as individuals, families, communities, and even nations, we have the capacity to learn how to heal and prevent much of the damage done by trauma. In so doing, we will significantly increase our ability to achieve both our individual and collective dreams.
Yeah.
Leave on a high note. But see, you know what? All of us here have been traumatized. All of us here. And then that's dealing with our own problems is what has led us to all of these profound awakenings, right? You know, all the self-harm that I've done to myself through alcoholism and, you know, self-berating and all that type of stuff growing up. It's like you start to deal with that stuff and then it leads to a transformation, spiritual transformation, as he says. And then that is sort of what's led us here to this day, each of us all dealing with our individual issues. You know, we didn't put it on everyone else to deal with our issues. We had to deal with them ourselves. And that is what has, you know, brought us, uplifted us to get to be talking with other like-minded people and trying to teach as well. Right now, we're trying to teach the things that helped us learn and grow. And so that's the thing. It's like the dealing with your own problems is going to lead to that transformation. Whereas, you know, shuffling your problems off or repressing them, it's doing the opposite, right? You're going down, not up. So, and then that's what everyone needs to do, not stop blaming everyone else and start looking in the mirror. And then, on the individual level, on the national level, and then on the whole level, all these people are talking about utopia and getting the world together, and, but they're doing it in the opposite way. They're trying to do it not like we're doing it from ourselves and then outwards. They're doing it from outwards, trying to hopefully make it somehow come back and reach them, which he will never do that. It's
And
never going to do that.
If 5 billion people die in the process, then that's okay, because at least we reached utopia.
Yeah.
It's the land that will never be reached.
No. Well, the interesting thing with what, the healing aspect of it, right? So for example, when you put food in the body, do you know where the food is going, what it's doing, and how it's going all about? No, you don't. If you have a cut on your finger, do you have to heal it? The body is doing it, right? The body innately builds life. How did you become even a human being? How did it happen? How did it organize all this stuff? Trillions of cells just organizing themselves. Right? That's the intelligence that you're starting to cue in when you start the healing process. All of a sudden, you just start doing the work, the somatic work, and all of a sudden you start to think differently automatically. The spiritual practice is a biological practice, not the other way around. Because if the biology isn't ready, and you think you're going to do this with the thinking part, it doesn't work. Again, you go biologically. Autonomic nervous system, 80% is afferent, meaning from the body to the brain, only 20% is going down. So if you want to change anything, are you going to start with the 20%, or are you going to start with the 80? Right? Yeah. But the 80% is not thinking. The 80% is intuition. If you go back to Jung, right, it's intuition, it's sensing and feeling. And thinking is on the top, but that's only a part of it. Yeah. That's why, for example, when you have interoception, neuroception, then comes perception, and then comes conception. So we try to do the opposite. We go from concept down all the other way. But the body already has made a decision. Am I safe? Do I have to run? Do I have to fight? Or am I going to freeze? Those four. The decision is being made on those four. And then everything else comes. Right? And we're trying, well, we're gonna do this. We're going to put money into this, and maybe if we pay more, then the kids are going to learn more. And maybe if we take drugs, things are going to work better. No. Doesn't work that way. Right? The biology tells you the story already. So movement is, I say movement is where you connect yourself to the archaic. Because you don't have to think about moving. You don't, right? You say raise your arm, right? So you raise your arm out, but did you really go through the whole process of how the arm comes from here to here? No. The body does it automatically. That's where you tune in. And so why is movement being taken out of school? Why are musical instruments being taken out of school? Why is art being taken out of school? All those are connecting ourselves, right? Re-embodiment, that's where it starts. If we don't do that, there's no help. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
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 Excellent. Well said. All right, guys. Well, let me